Ada had always been the type of girl who believed deeply in friendship. Raised by a single mother in the heart of Enugu, she understood the value of loyalty and sisterhood from a young age. Life hadn't been easy, but she pushed through school with determination, eventually graduating with a degree in marketing. Her true passion, however, was fashion. She loved to sew, sketch designs, and dream of one day launching her own brand, something uniquely African, modern, and powerful. Among the people who stood by her the most was Amaka, her best friend since secondary school. They had met in JS2 during a school excursion, and from that day, they became inseparable. Amaka had always been the more outgoing one, bold, vibrant, and full of energy. She was the kind of girl who walked into a room and made heads turn, while Ada was the quieter type, more reflective and cautious. But their differences made their bond even stronger. Amaka was Ada's cheerleader, her protector, her ride or die. Over the years, their friendship matured. Even when they went to different schools after WAEC, they never drifted. They stayed in touch through late-night phone calls, weekend visits, and endless chats about boys, dreams, and disappointments. After graduation, they both returned to Enugu to hustle in the city. Ada managed to land a small job at a local boutique as a junior assistant, saving every kobo she could while sewing for customers on the side. Her evenings were spent sketching ideas and uploading simple designs to her Instagram page, hoping to attract buyers. Amaka, on the other hand, was trying to find her feet. She had bounced between jobs, receptionist today, event usher tomorrow. Her family life was unstable. Her father had abandoned them years ago, and her mother was battling health issues. So when she showed up at Ada's doorstep one rainy evening, soaked and trembling, Ada didn't hesitate. She opened her door and her heart once again. Amaka said she had nowhere to go. Her uncle's wife had accused her of stealing, and she'd been thrown out. Without thinking twice, Ada cleared space in her small one-room apartment and welcomed her friend in. In the weeks that followed, their bond only deepened. They cooked together, laughed late into the night, and encouraged each other. Amaka even started helping Ada respond to customer messages online and occasionally modeled her outfits. They joked about how, one day, they'd travel abroad together, Ada as a fashion designer, Amaka as her brand manager. They shared everything, food, clothes, secrets, even bank passwords in case of emergencies. Ada had never felt luckier to have a best friend who understood her struggles. In a world that constantly reminded her of what she lacked, money, connections, support, Amaka's presence felt like a blessing. She never imagined that the same person she trusted more than anyone would be the one to betray her so cruelly. But betrayal, she would later learn, often wears the mask of love. And hers wore Amaka's face. Life with Amaka became Ada's new normal. They developed a routine that worked seamlessly. Every morning, Ada would wake early to prepare for work at the boutique, while Amaka helped tidy the room and prepare breakfast. By the time Ada returned in the evenings, Amaka would have responded to Instagram DMs from customers, helped package small orders, or even delivered a few nearby when Ada was too tired. Ada was impressed and grateful. It felt good to have someone she could lean on, someone who believed in her dream as much as she did, or so she thought. With the little profits Ada made, she started saving seriously. Her goal was to register her business officially and secure a better shop space. Her handmade designs were gaining attention online, and orders were picking up. Thanks to Amaka's outgoing nature, she even brought in a few customers from her own circle. Girls from her former jobs, acquaintances from church, and a couple of big girls who drove nice cars and loved to flaunt new clothes. Every sale brought Ada closer to her dream. Amaka began to joke that they should start calling the fashion brand Ada and Amaka Couture. It made Ada laugh, but it also warmed her heart. In her eyes, Amaka wasn't just her friend anymore, she was her business partner in the making. They talked late into the night about the future, how they'd open a showroom in Lagos, fly to Dubai to buy materials, and work with celebrities to style their events. The dream felt so real, so close, that Ada could almost touch it. Around this time, Ada met Chuka. It started innocently. A customer walked into the boutique where Ada worked and introduced himself after buying a shirt. He was charming, well-dressed, and had the confidence of someone who had seen the world. He told Ada he ran a small logistics company and was interested in supporting young entrepreneurs. At first, Ada was skeptical, but after a few more visits, Chuka asked her out for lunch. One date became 2, then 3. Soon, Ada was smitten. Amaka was her biggest supporter. She teased Ada endlessly, calling her Madam Wife and asking when the wedding was. She even helped Ada pick outfits for dates, did her makeup, and gave her advice about men. Ada couldn't believe her luck. She had a best friend who stood by her, and a man who believed in her business. Chuka began giving her ideas about how to expand her reach, offered to introduce her to potential investors, and even hinted at helping her get her first shop. One Saturday evening, as the three of them, Ada, Amaka, and Chuka, sat in a restaurant after a small business seminar, Amaka raised her glass and toasted, to friendship, to love, and to our future empire. They all laughed and clinked glasses. In that moment, Ada's heart swelled with gratitude. She looked at the two people beside her and thought, these are my people. With them, I am safe. With them, I will rise. What Ada didn't know was that this beautiful chapter in her life was the calm before a storm, one that would tear everything apart. Because while she saw trust, love, and loyalty, Amaka saw opportunity. And in the shadows of friendship, a trap was quietly being laid. The first sign that something wasn't right came quietly, almost too quietly to notice. Ada had returned from work one Tuesday evening and opened the small wooden box where she kept her savings, cash tucked neatly between fabric swatches and business documents. She had a habit of counting the money every Sunday, but for some reason, she decided to do it that night. As she began to count, her heart skipped. She counted again. And again. 10,000 Nigerian nairas was missing. She stared at the box for a long time, confused. She knew how meticulous she was. Every naira she saved was accounted for. She didn't want to believe the worst, so she told herself maybe she had miscounted last time or maybe she had taken the money for something and forgotten. The mind could be tired after all, especially with how much she had on her plate. When she mentioned it to Amaka later that night, Amaka shrugged and said, maybe that cleaner woman took it. You know these house helps are something else. Did she come around when you weren't home? Ada thought about it. The cleaner had indeed come, but only with Ada present. Still, she didn't want to argue. She let it go. But 2 weeks later, it happened again, Nigerian naira 50,000 gone. This time, the fear was real. Ada sat on the bed with the money box in front of her and tears in her eyes. Amaka, who had been scrolling through her phone, looked up and shook her head. Babe, I think you need to stop trusting people with your house when you're not around. Let's stop bringing outsiders in. If I'm not home, you shouldn't let anyone in. The suggestion made sense, but something didn't sit right with Ada. Still, she said nothing. She didn't want to accuse anyone without proof, and Amaka had always been there for her. It couldn't be her. No, Amaka was family. Meanwhile, things with Chuka were becoming odd. He had once been all over Ada, calling, texting, supporting her dream, but now, he barely picked her calls. When he did, he always sounded distracted or in a hurry. Ada chalked it up to stress. He said work was getting hectic and he was trying to expand his business. But deep inside, a part of her felt uneasy. The warmth in his voice was fading. One Friday evening, she returned from work early. As she approached her door, she heard soft voices inside. She paused, not wanting to interrupt a call. It was Amaka's voice, quiet, almost whispering, she has no clue. Don't worry. Once she brings the cash, we move. Ada froze. Her breath caught in her throat. She pressed her ear closer. The voice on the other end wasn't clear, but Amaka laughed softly. She's too trusting. That's her weakness. Ada stepped back, heart pounding. The door creaked as she pushed it open. Amaka looked up from the bed, startled, then quickly ended the call. "Hey babe. You're home early," she said with a smile. Ada stood still, trying to process what she'd just heard. She wanted to ask questions, scream, demand answers, but she couldn't find the words. Her chest felt tight, her stomach twisted. Amaka seemed to sense something was wrong. "You okay?" she asked. Ada forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." That night, she barely slept. Her mind played back the conversation again and again. Was she imagining things? Could Amaka really be hiding something from her? She didn't want to believe it. Amaka was her sister, her ride or die. But the money missing, the strange phone call, Chuka's distance, it all started to form a pattern Ada didn't want to accept. She decided she needed to be careful. From now on, she would watch closely, listen deeply, and pretend like nothing had changed. Because the truth was starting to whisper, and Ada knew she had to be ready to hear it, no matter how painful it might be. 2 weeks after the unsettling phone call, Amaka came home bubbling with excitement. She said she had met someone, an investor named Kelvin, at a small business mixer. According to her, Kelvin was into supporting young female entrepreneurs, especially those in fashion and design. He was based in Lagos but was in Enugu for a few weeks and was looking for people with potential to sponsor. "Ada, this is your moment," Amaka said, eyes gleaming. "All those nights you cried about money and exposure. This man wants to help you grow." At first, Ada was hesitant. The memory of that whispered phone conversation still lingered in her mind, but Amaka's enthusiasm was overwhelming. "He said he'll be at a private networking dinner next Friday. It's not open to everyone, but I told him about you and your brand. He's interested. But you have to come correct. Bring your samples, your pitch, your ideas, everything." Ada still wasn't sure, but Amaka's words were convincing. "This is why I've been helping you," she said. "All the work we've put in, this is our chance to blow." By Thursday, Ada had prepared everything. She used the last of her savings, Nigerian Naira 850,000, money she had set aside to register her business and pay for a small shop, to print professional brochures, sew new samples, and package her designs beautifully. She even borrowed a laptop from a friend to put together a digital presentation. Chuka hadn't been picking her calls, but she convinced herself she didn't need him. She had Amaka, and now, maybe Kelvin. Friday came like a dream. Amaka helped her get dressed in a sleek black gown, did her makeup, and even took photos of her for Instagram. They boarded a cab together to the location. A modest-looking event center on the edge of town. There weren't too many people, maybe 15 at most, all smartly dressed, seated at round tables with drinks and finger foods. Kelvin stood near the center, talking to a few men. He was tall, dark, and looked every bit the successful businessman. When Amaka introduced Ada to him, he smiled warmly. "So you're the designer I've heard so much about," he said. "Amaka's been singing your praises." Ada smiled, a bit shy, and thanked him. She handed him her pitch materials, and he took them, flipping through as he nodded approvingly. "You've got something special," he said. "Let's sit and talk." They talked for about 20 minutes. Kelvin asked all the right questions. What was her vision? How did she plan to scale? What kind of investment did she need? Ada answered each one with passion. It felt good to finally be seen. He told her she was brilliant, but she needed to think bigger. "If you want international clients, you have to leave the small mindset behind," he said. "That's why I want to work with you." Just as they were getting comfortable, the lights in the room flickered. Then, suddenly, the doors burst open. Four armed policemen stormed in, shouting, "Nobody move." People jumped to their feet in panic. Drinks spilled, chairs fell over, and within seconds, the room was in chaos. Ada froze, her heart slamming in her chest. One of the officers pointed at her. You're under arrest for financial fraud and identity theft." Before she could respond, they grabbed her by the arm. She screamed, trying to explain, but no one listened. She looked around for Amaka. She was gone. Vanished. Ada was pushed into a police van with two other people and driven to the station. Her bag, phone, and laptop were seized. At the station, she was thrown into a dimly lit cell with the heavy clang of the door closing behind her. She sat on the cold floor, trembling. Hours passed before someone finally came to talk to her. They showed her documents, bank statements, loan applications, and digital transactions, all in her name. She was accused of laundering money through multiple fake fashion businesses and receiving illegal funds. Ada was stunned. "This is not me," she cried. But the officer only stared at her coldly. "Well, someone used your name. And it's your signature on these documents." Tears streamed down her face as the reality began to sink in. Someone had used her dream, her identity, her hard work to set her up. And deep down, she already knew who. The person who had access to her passwords, her bank information, her business plans. The person she had called her sister. Amaka. The setup was complete, and Ada had walked right into it. The days in detention blurred into each other. Ada barely ate, barely slept. Her once vibrant spirit had dulled under the weight of confusion and fear. She couldn't understand how her life had unraveled so quickly. Every time she tried to explain her innocence, the officers waved her off. They told her she was just another fraudster playing dumb. To them, she was one of many. The girl who wore a pretty dress, smiled sweetly, and fooled the world with lies. But things began to change when a plainclothes officer named CSP Nwafor took an interest in her case. He was quiet but observant and didn't seem convinced by the surface-level reports. One afternoon, he asked Ada to explain everything from the beginning. Shaking, her voice cracking, she told her story, from how she started her business to how Amaka encouraged her to attend the networking dinner. She told him about the missing money, the strange phone call, and how she hadn't seen Amaka since the night of her arrest. She poured everything out, including her suspicions about Chuka, even though a part of her still hoped it wasn't true. CSP Nwafor listened without interrupting. After she finished, he nodded slowly and said, "We'll look into it." That night was the first time Ada slept, not peacefully, but with a tiny shred of hope. 3 days later, she was called into the interrogation room again. But this time, Chuka was there. He looked different. Not like the smooth-talking businessman she had once adored, but tired, ashamed. He couldn't meet her eyes. When he finally spoke, his words stabbed deeper than any knife. "Ada. I didn't mean for things to get this far." He sighed, his hands trembling. "Amaka approached me months ago. She told me you had money, savings, and she said if I helped her get close to you, she'd cut me in on the deal. At first, I thought it was just to help you get investors. That's what she told me. But later, she started using your name to create fake online fashion stores. She opened 3 accounts under your details. She told me you wouldn't find out." Ada's mouth hung open. She couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. Chuka continued, his voice low and broken. "She promised it would be temporary. That you'd get a piece of it too. But then she started doing things behind my back. Transferring large amounts. Signing papers. Using a guy named Kelvin to front the operation. The dinner. It was a setup. They planned to get you caught, pin everything on you, and vanish with the money. I swear, I didn't know she'd go that far." Ada collapsed into her chair, the weight of betrayal crushing her. Everything made sense now, the missing money, the vanishing axe, the shift in Chuka's behavior. She had been played. Her love, her friendship, her trust, used as tools in a cruel, calculated con. After Chuka's confession, CSP Nwafor reopened the investigation. They traced IP addresses linked to the fraudulent accounts and found they originated from an internet cafe near Abakpa, one that Amaka frequently visited. Witnesses claimed they had seen her there multiple times with a laptop matching Ada's description. The so-called Kelvin was traced to a known fraud ring operating across several southeastern states. He had fled the city the night of the raid. Eventually, the evidence cleared Ada's name. She was released with an apology, but no amount of words could undo the damage done. Her savings were gone, her reputation stained, and the person she loved and the person she trusted the most had both betrayed her in the cruelest way. Outside the police station, Ada stood for a long time, staring at the world like a stranger. The city that once felt like home now felt cold and unfamiliar. She didn't know where to go or who to trust. But one thing was clear, the life she had before was over. And the girl who walked into that dinner full of hope would never return. She had been broken. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. Getting released from police custody should have felt like freedom, but to Ada, it felt like walking out of one prison and into another. She stepped onto the street outside the station with no money, no phone, no laptop, and nowhere to go. The officer who had brought her out gave her back the only thing they hadn't confiscated, her ID card, and mumbled an apology. But what was an apology worth when your name had been dragged through the mud and your future torn apart? She walked for hours that day, her legs numb, her mind foggy. When she finally reached the compound where she had once lived, she stood outside for a long time, staring at the familiar gate. The landlord's wife came out, looked at her with wide eyes, then quickly called her husband. The man came and shook his head. "Ada, you can't stay here anymore. After what we heard, you brought police Waala to our compound. People are afraid." She tried to explain, tears streaming down her face, but it was no use. Her room had been cleared out weeks ago, and her belongings, what was left of them, were given away. She thought of going to her mother's house in the village, but she couldn't bring herself to face her. The shame, the pity, the questions, she wasn't ready. So she called her cousin Nena, who lived in a Face Me I Face You in New Haven. Nena took her in without asking too many questions. She gave Ada a mat on the floor and a plate of hot gari and soup. That night, Ada cried into the thin pillow, not just for everything she had lost, but for how alone she felt. Amaka had vanished, and no one had heard from her. Some said she was in Port Harcourt. Others claimed she had crossed into Ghana. The police said they would continue searching, but Ada knew better. People like Amaka didn't get caught, not when they were this calculated. In the days that followed, Ada tried to reach people she once called friends. Some didn't pick her calls. Others said they were busy. A few responded with stiff sympathy but kept their distance. Word had spread about her arrest. Even though she had been cleared, most people didn't care about the truth. The scandal was more entertaining than her innocence. Left with nothing, Ada began sewing again using a borrowed needle and a small sewing machine in Nena's room. She patched old clothes, adjusted school uniforms, and hemmed wrappers for market women. It wasn't much, but it put food in her mouth and helped her survive. Every night, she looked at her hands, once used to sketch beautiful gowns, and reminded herself she still had a gift. Her dream hadn't died, it had only been delayed. Slowly, her strength returned. With help from Nena and one of her former Instagram customers who still believed in her, Ada reopened her business page. She explained nothing, shared no pity posts, just posted her work and let the designs speak for themselves. Orders trickled in, and by the second month, she had saved enough to rent a tiny corner in a shared shop. But beyond the hustle, Ada had changed. She no longer gave out trust easily. She no longer saw smiles at face value. The betrayal had left a scar so deep, it would take years to fade. Yet, it also gave her a fire, a fierce determination to rise, not for revenge, but to prove that she couldn't be destroyed by someone else's darkness. The girl who once depended on others to lift her up was gone. In her place was a woman who had been through hell and found her way back with nothing but her own strength. She didn't need Amaka. She didn't need Chuka. She only needed herself. And that, she now realized, was more than enough.